So it's recording, yeah. Okay, so let's continue with these images, type of images that we are doing. I hope by now you understand that each one of these types is a kind of existential posture, or it's a dimension. You can be in perception, you're describing things. You can be in action, you want to change the world. And you have to become sensitive to the fact that art, at least in this theory, is not really creative as we usually say. It's not that you create stuff. Actually, art is simply an amplification, a magnification for things which are already there, which are describing, changing the world, having a relation to the originary words, etc. So as this applies on both images. Both images, you have a kind of existential dimension, and you are going to amplify it in a work of art, i.e. you are being able to capture, to isolate a specific existential behavior, for example, like mental movements. You're going to isolate mental movements. Are you going to make it visible? We've seen last time that with the Second World War, a configuration of the arts collapsed. So even if all art is about isolating living movements, etc., you have two major configurations running throughout all history practically. The first one is what we call the classical type. It's not a type, the classical regime. And the other one is the Baroque regime, or the postmodern regime as a modern regime. Now, we said that with the Second World War, what happens is that the classical / modernist way of doing images collapses. What characterized the classical modernist way of doing images was that it was representational. It means that you construct an image in accordance to what you understand. Let's suppose you understand the revolution in a certain way. You are going to construct an image of the revolution that follows the articulations of what you have understood, meaning the articulations of the concept, and your movie, if you take the Potemkin or October, is going to reflect your understanding. This is what you call a classical way to make images. It doesn't matter if it's abstract or figurative, as they usually say. Abstract, figurative are useless categories practically. What matters is, am I centering my image production while producing it on my understanding, or am I doing something else? Now, what can be the something else? This is what starts to happen after World War II, with the collapse of what we have called back then and until today the great narratives. Now, what are the great narratives? They are systems of intellectual systems like the American dream, communism, French universalism, etc. They are intellectual systems that gives you a world vision and organize practically everything in accordance to these world visions. Now, with the Second World War, these world visions, they made war together, and you had a new regime of management and of dealing with the people, which wasn't anymore based on ideas, but it was based on as you have seen last time, the network, statistics, advertisement, and all of these new tools that mainly emerged in the post-World War II. And these tools allowed a kind of creation of a, in quote, an artificial community. Now, when you lose the concept, as you have said last time, you wake up one morning and you see your building destroyed. You don't know anymore what this is. It's a rubble. It looks like a sculpture. You don't know what to do with it. What you see goes beyond your capacity to cope with what you are seeing. And this is when things start to appear as pure visualities, as pure optical things. When you look at the destroyed sceneries in Germany Year Zero by Rossellini, you have this kind of, it's like as if you are on the moon and everything looks like a sculpture or like we don't know what, like these things. And your movements are discoordinated, you don't know what to do. You start jumping around, dancing on the ruins, and you do all kinds of weird things that you wouldn't do really if you are in a sensory motor organized milieu, and where everything has a meaning and a place. So I'm trying to tell you is that with the collapse of the concept, what I'm saying must be very palpable and simple. Collapse of the concept meaning you look at something and you don't know what it means. When you don't know what it means, usually you don't know how to use it. And when you don't know neither how to use it nor what it means, you start looking at it. You start looking at it only as it.
Hi, Faris.
Hello. You start looking at it, meaning you just start contemplating this thing that you don't understand what it is. And this is when the purely visual appears. This is what we call the optical, as you have seen last time. And the son, the optical sound, appears in the post-war because you are in this context of things which are, the war is itself optical sonorous in its destructive phase. And later you have advertisement, use optical sonorous technique, and you are really like faced with these viruses, these little jingles, little advertisements, viral images, and all of this configures the new world. So one of the first features of the time image is that it's an image where you don't have meaning anymore. It's like when Reinhardt says, painting without ideas, without origin, without tradition, without describing, without, meaning it's a painting which is just painting. So this kind of dismissal of the concept opens you on the purely visual. Now, this is one of the dimensions. So when you really like the way you understand and the way you are able to coordinate and move in a space, in a milieu, when this collapses, you are faced with the purely optical. Now, in the classical world, if you remember the beginning of this course, you have what you call an automated memory, or a memory grounded on habit in an organized world, meaning a world which is not the result of the aftermath of a war or something like that. In an organized world, you look at the door, perception, you understand it's a door, you open the door, you see the staircase, you go down the staircase, you take the corridor, you're out of the building, you watch while you're crossing the street, you go in a shop, and all of this is coordinated action, perception, and all of this is mediated by a habitual memory, or what you call an automated memory, where you just know what you're doing and you're moving around in this kind of well-organized milieu. Now, what happens in a situation of collapse or when the habit is shattered, you're facing something and you don't know what it is. What happens in this situation is that what gets activated is what you call your attentive memory, which is different from the memory of the automated, of the well-organized milieu, meaning the automated memory. I explain. In an automated scenario, meaning when things are normal, classical image, you see someone, your friend, you recognize him immediately, you shake hands, you say, hey, hello, how are you? You talk of this and that, and you move on. This is, if you want, a classical way to relate to memory, where your memory is able to get the right memory for the right perception, and then you're able to say the right things for the right person, and so on and so forth. Now, what happens is that you have another type of memory theorized by Bergson in his book Matter and Memory. And he tells you there's a memory called the attentive memory. Let's suppose you see someone in the street and you don't know who he is. You see, this is the rupture. You don't know exactly who this person is. And you start wondering, is he my friend from school? Is he my friend from maybe university? Or no, maybe he's a cousin I saw, I don't know, in a marriage a couple of years ago. Who is this guy? I can't remember. And when you are in this kind of, when you have a perception which is not like immediately identifiable, your memories start to go in circles in order to find the appropriate memory. I don't know if you went through that, but you know what he's saying is very simple. You start looking at his face and you schematize. What does it mean? You follow. You say, the ear and the neck reminds me of him. Yes, he used to be in the army with me. Or you say, no, he's actually a school friend. And each time you remember something, the character changes. When you remember that he's your cousin, he becomes a little bit different. And if you remember that, no, he's from school, he becomes a little bit different. And this is what Bergson says. You are going into cycles of memory. So now, this, I think you know it more or less. I don't know if you know the Escher cube. The Escher cube, I'll show it to you in a second. It's a cube where you schematize the cube in order for you to be able to see if it's up or down or left or right. You know these cubes, I guess. I'll show it to you in a second. It must be here. No. So we've seen Escher, I know, in the perception image, but Escher uses attentive memory sometimes to trick the vision. So I'm going to share my screen. For example, this is one of these Escher cubes. I'm going to share the screen. So I'm sharing my screen now. I hope you're seeing. These are Escher cubes. You're seeing them? Yes, no, maybe.
I can't see it.
You can or you cannot? Can you see it now?
I can't.
You can. So Google Escher cube. If you can't see my shared screen, do the others see it? Can you see Abad the cube or someone?
Yeah, I can see it.
You see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you see this is an Escher cube. If you're not seeing, just Google Escher cube and you will see the cube. You see these cubes are peculiar. Why? Because, well, if you schematize, if you start from here and you go up and like that, you see it as if you're looking from down to up. But if you start from here and you schematize it like that, you see it downwards. And if you follow the external lines, you feel it like a flat figure. Now, so if you want, these are what you call Escher cubes. And what's interesting in them is that they literally change depending on how you apprehend the image. Now, if you want the most classical version, so if you start like that, you see it upwards, and if you start like this, you see it downwards, and if you follow the external contour, you see it flat. So I hope this is clear. Now, these are Escher cubes, and you have many impossible figures like that. You know, Escher, that we've seen already in the perception image, I repeat, of course, he's not doing memory images or recollection images, but he uses the attentive memory component in order to create perception images where the position of the subject is displayed. Now, whatever is the case, what I'm trying to tell you is very simple, is that our perception is like informed with our memory, as you can see on the Escher cubes. But Bergson in matter and memory, he really studied a lot of clinical cases and all kinds of clinical data, meaning people in hospitals, clinics, etc., who suffer from memory and recollection disturbances. And the theory of Bergson, which you are using here, is that the schematizing technique is what allows you to actualize a memory. I repeat, it must be very simple. You schematize when you just follow with your eyes the silhouette or the little, the shape of something. And when you follow with your eyes this kind of very superficial shape of something, for example, a face is 2 points and a smiley thing, you recognize a face, but when you put a circle, 2 points and a smile, this is a schema of a face. So schematizing, like in the Escher cube, you follow 3 lines or 3 lines in the other direction. When you schematize, you actualize the memory, and the memory gets mixed or unified with the perception, and this is what you call your concrete perception. And Bergson, he's like really defending this point that our perception is not pure, that it is informed with memories. And actually, for example, you have clinical experiments where they give books to people and they ask these people to read from these books. And actually, some letters were removed from the words. So when someone is reading this book, he's convinced that the words are complete. For example, you write house but without a U, or you write, I don't know, hand, but you remove the N and stuff like that. And people, when asked if they read full words, they are convinced that they have read full words, while actually they have read tweaked or amputated words. So here you see that what we see is informed by these projections of memories. And actually what we see happens like that. You schematize the shape of the word, and then you have the memory of it, and you have the impression that you are seeing the full word. Now you have other cases evoked by Bergson, like what we call psychological blindness, which is quite interesting. For example, some people, if you ask them to remember their husband, wife, this is a story of a man. He used to suffer from psychological blindness. If you ask this man to remember his wife, he's able to describe his wife, in detail from memory. But then when they bring the wife to this man, he is unable to recognize his wife. So you see, it's quite weird. So he's able to remember her, but when he sees her, he's unable to recognize her, which is very, very peculiar. So the theory of Bergson is that the schematizing function of this man is able to go and fetch memories on the side of the memories, but is unable to plug on the visual field. There's a kind of rupture between his motor schematizing capacities associated to what he sees, but this rupture is not happening between the motor capacities and what he remembers. So he's able to remember, but he's unable to see. And this is how you have psychological blindness. So I hope you're getting the scheme, which is quite simple. You have perceptions here, the schematizing function in the middle, and memories here. And you can schematize the perceptions to bring in memories which have similar schema to the perceptions, or you can schematize your mental imaginations and fetch memories in your inner kind of world. And sometimes if you're unable to schematize perception, you're unable to recognize what you see, and vice versa, because you have people who are able to copy a drawing, but they're unable to draw a drawing from memory. Now, all these cases shows you that you have this three partition, which are going to be important for us to understand many of the images we are dealing with, which is you have perceptions, which are the given data. You have the schematizing function. I'm going to be able to follow the line on the given data, and then you have your memories that can be actualized because they have the same line, the same schema between the memory and the perception. So this is what is happening in what we call recollection. Recollection meaning souvenir, to remember in the sense of the act of remembering. So when you remember, what happens when you look at your friend in the street and you don't know him, what is really happening is that you start schematizing traits of his body, his face, his attitude, and this schema goes and tries to apply on a memory. It tries to go and fetch a memory. Now, of course, given that the schema is too general, it can start fetching many memories, or there are many possible memories that can fit that. And this is when you start doing these circles. So you have a perception, which is like a small segment. You schematize it, you go into a memory level, then you go into another memory level, and so on and so forth. And this is how you see, like in the Escher cube, you see the guy changing. You see that, oh, he's like that, then he becomes someone else, and then someone else, until it clicks. When it clicks, you're done. You're able to recognize, and you go out of the recognition type of memory, and now you are just seeing again this person, and you're able to engage into a normal conversation, so on and so forth, meaning you're back to the real, normal, well-constituted world. Now, whatever is the case, you have a type of image that deals with that, which is the recollection image. Now, this image is about what? You see, if you want to do a movie or a painting or whatever you want, a work of art that deals with your memories, not with the memories per se that we will see next time, what you call the memory image, with the souvenir, with the act of remembering, with the act of recollecting a memory. If you want to do a movie about that, the thing is that you shouldn't just put, flashback. These are the bad movies. A bad memory movie or a bad recollection movie, work of art, etc. But usually it's in movies for recollection. Very few artists deal with recollection, even though I think it would be very interesting to find some. You see, some bad movies are the like that, the old man comes in like that, he sits on a chair and he tells to his son, my son, and then he starts remembering the war, and then you have now this is a very bad recollection kind of movie, because it's actually an action movie, because simply put, the images that you are seeing are action images, meaning you have a situation, action, reaction, duels, he wins, he becomes a hero, and all of that is simply, stamped, it's my memory, but actually it's not really a memory. And even the recollection is very, very anecdotal, because he just put a sign saying, now I'm remembering, and then you have a normal movie. So Deleuze says quite a weird sentence. Really, if you want to feel the time, if you want to really go into this recollection dimension, you need to ask yourself, why do I need to recollect? You see, you've said that in the experience of attentive recognition, when you see your friend, you need to recollect because there's something that you're unable to recognize. So you start recollecting when actually there's something goes wrong. And here we are beginning to go deep in the time image. Something goes wrong, something gets out of normality. This is when you have to recollect. And here Deleuze says, this is why you have to ask yourself, when you want to recollect, you have to ask yourself, what is forcing you to recollect? I explain. You see, sometimes, you want to be a good guy. Like Carné, Le Jour se lève. I hope you'll watch the movies or watch the clips. I'll show you some in a second. In Carné, in Le Jour se lève, it's a story that begins like an action movie. It's a guy who is a hard-working guy. He falls in love. He wants to get married in the context of industrial France in the 50s. So it looks like an action movie. First, when you look at it, you say, this looks like an action movie. But then weird things start to happen. What starts to happen is that this guy, he has a kind of uncontrolled violence. So when he gets really angry, he starts beating people like very violently. And at one point, and each time he gets angry, he regrets it and he says, I shouldn't be angry. Why I'm doing that? I'm ruining my life. All I want is to live happily with my fiancée, etc. And at one point, in one of these fits of anger, he kills someone. He kills a guy who was flirting with his girlfriend, and the police comes to get him, so he goes and he hides in a hotel room, and this is when he starts to remember. Now, why does he start to remember? Because he wants to know what happened with him in the past for him to be that violent. This is what you call a destinal point. You see, what is a destinal point? It's a point where it's clear that your life cannot go straight because you want to go straight. You want to get married, married wife, good job, and you want that. Okay, fine. But the problem is that even though you want that, you're unable to get that because there's something that deviates you. There's something, in this case, it's anger. And in the character of Carné, the guy is unable to control such anger. It's as if there's a destiny weighing on him. You see, there's a kind of destiny that he's unable to deviate, and you see, it's like a force that bends your trajectory towards a place that you didn't want to go to. And this is why we are going, as I've said earlier, in the time image now really deeply, because you start seeing that time is a power. What does it mean? It means, to understand that, imagine the Potemkin, or imagine a classical action movie like the Potemkin or October, meaning these guys want to do the revolution. Or imagine a Western a la John Ford. Or imagine Abraham Lincoln, like he wants to defend, as you have seen, he wants to defend the innocent who are being falsely accused. But imagine now Abraham Lincoln, all of a sudden he has like weird behaviors. Like instead of defending them, he starts to, I don't know how we can do that, but he starts to denunciate them, or he starts to cry or something like that, and he fails. This is what you are dealing with now. It's as if there's something that escapes our rationality, there's something that escapes our planification. And this something is or pertains to what Deleuze calls the powers of time. It's a power. You want to have a nice home and get married and settle down, and you find yourself killing someone. Something went wrong, something irrational happened, something which is beyond the concept and beyond your sensory motor control. You start beating someone to death, and this means that something is coming from the past to deviate, to bend your actions. So you have this destinal point, but the issue with the temporal images is that you don't know where it is. You don't know why you are violent. Maybe if you take Freudian stuff, maybe, you know, someone has beaten you a long time ago. Maybe you had a dream. We don't know what's your story. All we know is that the reason for that is like a problematic hidden point. And this is why you remember. Why do you remember? You remember because you need to find something that is simply not accessible. This is what makes a good recollection image. So what makes a good recollection image, or in this case, image souvenir, or this kind of trip, this kind of going in the past, is the necessity to go in the past. If I just sit on my chair, I tell you, you know what, I remember my heroic actions during the Second World War, like many movies do. It's not a recollection image. It's just like, I don't know, it's an anecdotal kind of introduction into the movie, and that's it. Now, to have a good recollection image, you need hence to have the necessity to go back. I think here you can find artists who work on the borders of psychoanalysis or on the borders of introspection that do this kind of recollective, introspecting work because they feel that there's something wrong with them or something wrong happening in their life, and they need to go and get this point, even though this point is always a horizon. You never really get it. So what Carné did, which is quite interesting, is that he really gave a cinematographical plastic solution. I hope now you'll get attentive to these things. This is why I underline them. It means that to really like incarnate, to make in the image visible his issue, what worries him, what he would like to show you, which is that memory begins with an incident in the present, and it goes and looks for the reason for that incident in the past. So you have this kind of cycle. I am in the present, and I need to go in my memory to know why I was or I ended up here. His plastic solution is to put the guy in a hotel room. This is now the center of the present, the peak of the present. And he goes and he fetches memories. And hence you see him going backwards in his life and then going back to the hotel room. Now, what's interesting in Le Jour se lève is that each time he comes back, something has changed in the hotel room because the cops are coming and getting closer and closer. So you start seeing that the room is being gunned. You see then the door is broken. So time is passing by while he's doing these trips in the past. So this is more or less clear. So you see, Carné gives you this kind of point, the hotel room, and then the images of the movie. He goes when he started working. He goes when he was more or less a young man, when he met his fiancée. And each time you try to see what really happened with this guy to end up here. So one of the way to do that, hence, is what you call a destinal point. A destinal point, you have to imagine it as a black hole, as a center of extreme gravity. And this kind of black hole is going to bend. All your life is going to, in a way, gravitate towards this kind of point of concentration without you being able to control it. And you just are drifted towards that point. So this is the first kind of problematic point in the recollection image, which is the destinal point. Now you have something else. And another author, which is a great, absolutely incredible movie maker, not very well known, unfortunately, maybe you know him, it's Mankiewicz. Mankiewicz, if you want to watch movies and really have fun and watch incredibly beautiful, you can watch Mankiewicz, which is, you know, the heydays of great American cinema. And Mankiewicz, it's a bit different, his conception of time. For Mankiewicz, time is not this kind of black hole where you end up, you know, looping in. It's what he calls bifurcation points. Now, what is a bifurcation point? A bifurcation point, as its name tells it, you are supposed to, you're going again right, and you end up left. But this time it's not a destinal point. It's a kind of forking. Meaning you have an event that happens which makes you deviate. You see, it's not like a traumatic event or like something happened in your lives that made you now completely dispossessed of your capacity. This would be the decimal point. It is something such as a tiny thing happens, something insignificant happens, and not something very, very meaningful. It's almost the opposite. And you see that your life starts to decompose. If you want, these points are called by Fitzgerald, the writer, they are called little cracks. And the fêlure, meaning tiny cracks. If you have a vase of porcelain, you look at it, you have these micro cracks, but at one point the crack becomes bigger and bigger. With time, the crack starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger until the vase cracks, until the vase is cut in half. And these are what you call the microfêlure in Deleuzian language, meaning little cracks. Now, what is a little crack? I explained to you here how it works in a Mankiewicz movie. For example, there's a movie called A Letter to Three Wives, where a very, seductive woman, which is in a tiny village, and usually you have issues when you have a very beautiful, seductive woman in a tiny village because all the men start to, desire her, and this woman, at one point, she wants to leave the village because she's starting to have too many personal problems with all of these intermingled desires. And she writes 3 letters to 3 wives, which are her 3 friends. And practically it's the same letter where she says that she had an affair with one of the husbands of these 3 wives. And this is where each one of these wives reads the letter, and she tries to remember when it started to go wrong. I hope now you see the necessity of the recollection. The necessity of the recollection would be, when did it start to go wrong? So you read your letter, and this is when one of these wives goes back. She goes back into her memory, in order for her to remember what could have happened. And this is when you see the scenes. This is when you see the scenes of these recollections. But what you need to understand is this. But what is she trying to find in these memories? So the images you see on the screen are now recollection images, meaning the images that come from the past, but in these images you have to look for something. You have to look for the crack. This is the interesting part in Mankiewicz. For example, Mankiewicz shows you the woman remembering her husband buying a disc, disc player. And this is when she goes back into the past. So I'll show you very quickly the scene for you to get the feel of the image. And what you need to understand is that here he's making a kind of travel in the past in order to find this detail when things started to go wrong.
Nothing to think about except the picnic and the weenie roast and coming home. Oh, that. Kathleen's going to read us a fairy story. My favorite kind. I grew up on it. Only I wrote my own. May I start on the suspicion? You ready, Kathleen? Of course. Once upon a time, there lived a very poor girl who was very beautiful.
One second.
Here now, what's this? Conduct unbecoming an officer and a lady.
I'm such an unholy mess.
How?
Yes.
A little too kinky, maybe?
Just said it with cement.
Here, try this. It'll take the kink out of a watch.
I'm no raving beauty, heaven knows, but I did so want to look my miserable best tonight. The very first time we've gone out together, all dressed up like civilians. And you would be the one man in the world that looks even better out of uniform than in.
Got the jumps, kid? Quite a day, that's all. Quite a change. Out of the Navy, out of uniform, new home, new town, new friend.
Oh, I told that blasted girl I wanted to comb it out soft, making me look even more like a farmhand than I feel.
Easy does it.
Meeting your friends for the first time. Wouldn't you want them to see me like this?
I should hope not. You'll be sure to put...
Okay, so I hope you're getting the idea. This is one of the things that maybe it started to go wrong that night. So the night where she first met his friends. Now you have other women who start remembering. For example, one of them remembers the day where her husband bought a CD player or a disc player, and he started playing classical music at home. Now, you see, what you need to understand in these recollection issues is that the event could be like nothing. You know, the guy is not doing anything bad. He just bought a CD player, and he's playing music at home while his wife in the movie was preparing dinner. But she thinks that maybe this is when things started to go wrong between them, because he simply wasn't interested in her anymore. He's completely gone in his music. And this is how it begins. So I repeat, the main idea or the sensitive points that you need to get, because this is like all the images, it's an existential living thing, is that sometimes you're sitting with your meaningful other, and he does something or she does something, and at that moment it looks like nothing, but with time it begins to get deeper and deeper and deeper, and it requires a gigantic dimension without you noticing. And this is the interesting point. It is that this tiny event makes you feel something tiny, and then it starts building up like a snowball until the collapse or the rupture. Now, these are the points that you need to look for. Now, of course, Mankiewicz, who is really like studying this living situation, this existential situation, he knows that sometimes the one who's able to notice the crack is not you, but someone else. For example, you are having a dinner with your friends, and you're eating your chicken the way you like it, and your friend notices that in a way your wife is a bit like tiny bit annoyed by that, either by the sound or by the way you eat. And this is, for example, a crack. Now, neither you nor your wife notices that really. It's a tiny thing, something that you can't really like speak about. This is what's interesting in these type of images. It's like something that you can't really say what's wrong with that. There's nothing wrong really in it, and yet you feel that something went off. And this is why in the movies of Mankiewicz, what's interesting is that he always, or in many of his movies, he has what he calls a witness, meaning you have a kind of character that sees the crack, and later on, the day of the rupture, or when things are going really bad, it is this guy, the witness, that reminds the other two characters what happened that day. For example, if you want a beautiful movie about these bifurcations and cracks, you can watch Julius Caesar and Cleopatra. You have two movies. One is called Caesar, the other one is called Cleopatra. In Caesar, what's interesting is the speech of Marlon Brando, which is playing the role of Antony. And I'm telling you this just because to see how things deviate. For example, they killed Caesar. Brutus and his friend killed Caesar because he wanted to be a dictator. And in the movie, you have Brutus who gives a speech, and everyone is convinced that, yes, it's a very good thing that they killed Caesar because Caesar wanted to be a dictator and the Romans are free. They can't bear to have a dictator, so everyone agrees. And then Antony comes, i.e. Marlon Brando, and he makes a speech where the people change their mind. So they were saying, yes, it's great that you have killed Caesar. And after the speech, they say, no, let's kill Brutus now because he had killed Caesar, and Caesar was our savior, our hero, our god. And you have this kind of bifurcation. So all I'm trying to tell you is that be it with speech or with things that happens or whatever, things can deviate from their assigned track. They can change, they can become other, and this is due to temporal considerations most of the time. If you take the movie Cleopatra, Antony, now played by someone else, not by Marlon Brando, I forgot his name. Antony goes to Egypt to conquer Egypt, and instead of conquering Egypt, he ends up falling in love with Cleopatra. And Cleopatra is one of these characters that know how to more or less manipulate the cracks. You know, some people are very good at that. I don't know how they do it, but they throw you a sentence, and you just feel that you become a bit disturbed and start working through you. Some characters, the forked characters, as Mankiewicz conceives them, as the forked characters, are characters who are able really to play on your thoughts and emotion, to make you deviate from your goal. And Cleopatra in the Cleopatra movie is one of these characters who is able to make Antony deviate from his conquest of Egypt to become practically her lover, and then he abandons the army, and he really he ends up really bad. You know, he's not a general anymore. He's degraded. You know, and then he even fails in his war against the Roman, against which he insurrected. So it's a complete disaster, and you see here really like the power of this forking. You know, Proust used to say that in time things acquire incredible dimensions. This is also part of this cracked logics. What does it mean in time things acquire incredible dimension? It means that a little sentence, a little memory, a little incident with time starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger until you are unable anymore to control its effects on you. Now, you could be in this kind of image, and this is what you need to detect and to work on. So if you want, this is what we call the middle circuit. What is a middle circuit? A middle circuit is simply when you see someone and you go fetch a memory, you recollect, or you have a problem today and you go fetch a memory to understand how did we get here. You can do a recollection movie on history. You can do a recollection movie on your life. For example, you can do a recollection movie asking the question, how did Lebanon get here? Was it the 58 war? Was it, I don't know, when Salah allied with Fuad al-Khoury? Maybe this was the beginning of the end. When did, here we're taking the life of a country. And you can do it like that, like, you know, you are in a messy situation today, like you see financial collapse, wars, garbage, and you wonder what went wrong to get here. This would be a recollective kind of image type. You can do it on your personal life. You're broke, you're you know, depressed or whatever, and you start wondering why you got here. So this is, if you want, the recollection type, which is the middle circle. Now you have something else when the sensory motor conceptual organization collapses, meaning when the normal world is shattered. When the normal world is shattered, you can start looking at things and going into an even bigger loop. It's not that you want to know who is your friend, but you start really like going into any other image. I explain. I explained this other thing, and this is what you call the dream image. So what is a dream? You see, a dream is a kind of recollection. Unfortunately, many people, including Freud, they mix both. Commentary of Deleuze, really, like you have to distinguish between recollecting and dreaming because they don't have the same image way of functioning. So what is a dream? Bergson says, when you dream, how does it work? You know, when you go to dream, example from Bergson, let's suppose you have a curtain which is green, a green curtain with little light, little dots of light floating through your green curtain. Bergson says you start dreaming of a green field with lilies on them, white lilies. Why you dream of a green field with white lilies? Because it's the same schema. You know, white dot on a green surface could be your curtain, it could be a lily in a field. So this is how you do your dream. You see, in your dream, your schema, your schematization makes you go way beyond your let's say, reasonable memories. You start going anywhere. You dream of your uncle, and if he's a bit, I don't know, tanned, he becomes a dolphin. And then the dolphin transforms into a saw. And then the saw turns into a jazz band, and so on and so forth. You see, this is like this movement is called an anamorphic movement. I hope you remember this word, because you are a bit tired of hearing everywhere. Each time someone does something a little bit weird, they say, you know, it's like a dream, it's surrealist. Well, no. First, dreams are not necessarily surrealist, not necessarily, even though you can have anamorphic images in some of the surrealist paintings or sculptures or movies. But the anamorphosis is something that pertains to the time image, and it pertains to this kind of mechanism where an image is going to actualize another image, and where another image is going to actualize a third image, and so on and so forth. So what is anamorphosis? Anamorphosis is when you start schematizing the aspect of an image and it becomes another image. So you schematize the other image and you're not done schematizing, and you have a third, fourth, and so on. And this is how the dream forms a chain. I hope this concept is clear. You see, dream is a very, very specific and well-defined mechanism of the image. Given some of its feature is going to call for another image, and this can go forever. Anamorphosis. So dreams are anamorphic.
I have a question.
Yeah. Yes?
It's Noor.
Yes, Noor.
Could you consider a dream to be a recollection of memories, but as you said, in somehow surrealist way, not necessarily, of course?
In an impulse way? Can you repeat, please? Noor. Yeah, can you
I'm
say?
sorry, your Wi-Fi is really bad.
Not a problem. Just type your question, I'll read it.
Okay, I will.
Me, I can hear you, but type it anyway. So if I got your question correctly, see, the dream, no, it's not really a recollection image in an impulsive way, if I heard you correctly. The dream actually has another mechanism of the recollection. Recollection, you really have a point that you're looking for, and you have a situation where you're stuck in, and you start going to fetch the appropriate memory for the situation. You see, the relation between the present and the relation between the present and the memory field is okay. The relation between the memory field and the the present is quite well secured, and you look for something for what happened with you. I hope this is clear. Now, in the dream, as you will see soon, things go off track. It's not that you're looking for anything precise, but you just see an image, and the image, as if the image calls for another image and another and another in an open way. So you don't really have a kind of center for that. It just goes on and on and on. The circle gets bigger and bigger and bigger, meaning you can fetch memories from all over the place without having, for the time being, a meaning or a goal. I'm saying this, what I really want you to be attentive to is the way it functions, the way the images really are enchained together. In a dream, you could have a dolphin, then you have, I don't know, a jazz band, then, and can go on like that, as long as there's a kind of schematical resemblance between these images. On the other hand, in a recollection image, you don't have this kind of openness, but you go and you fetch a memory for a situation. I hope this is clear. So you have memory, present, while in a dream movie, you will have image, then another image, then another image, then another image, and you can lose the present altogether. You don't have this kind of alternation, memory, present, as you can see in the recollection image, even if, and this is why images are a bit complicated, even if sometimes the material of the dream are memories, meaning are stuff that you recollect, but this doesn't matter here, because what matters is the form. So I'll show you some dream images, but what you need to understand is that the dream image is really anamorphic. Remember this word, anamorphism is when something transforms into something else because they have a common schema and you are schematizing and it changes. Another definition of anamorphism is that the image changes with the position of the viewer, which is a bit vague as a definition, because all images change with the position of the viewer. But what is really meant is that the dreamer, when he starts looking at the image, it changes. It's not that, the position of the dreamer changes it, even though you had at one point very popular sculptures that were all over the place on Facebook, where, when you move like that, you see that it's a giraffe, and when you look at it frontally, you see that it's let's say, a lion. And this is also anamorphic, but it's an anamorphosis of perception. But it's an anamorphic thing, meaning while you're moving, this is, if you want, the equivalent of the schema, your movement changes what you are seeing itself, and not just changing the perspective on what you are seeing. So I'll show you here Bunuel. Again, unfortunately, this is what I think. Many people think that surrealism, is dream images. It's not true. Surrealism is in relation to the origin. Surrealists worked a lot on the dreams because they could be the key for the origin. But the surrealist image as such is not a dream image. It has in it dream components, like in Dali made many paintings where you have anamorphoses. You look at the painting and you think it's a face, but when you look again, you see that it's an old man and stuff like that. But he did that. He used the anamorphosis to access the originary work, which is very, very peculiar. Meaning you can have a type inside a type, but what counts is the last type, the dominant type. Most of the time, it's very rare to have a hybrid type, even though it's possible. But what I'm trying to say is that surrealism uses anamorphosis to access the origin, while you can have images that are anamorphic without the need to access the origin. So I'll show you here an anamorphosis by Bunuel and Dali. And of course, this is an anamorphosis in the service of, in a way, an originary image. But anyway, I'll show you the anamorphosis as such. I hope you will detect the schema, the actualization of the image, and why it's an anamorphosis. So did you see where is the anamorphosis and what was the scheme? Who would like to answer? Anyone? Aya? Ah, I will show it to you again. Did you see it? Yeah? Huh? Okay, so no worries. I'll describe you the images. Abbad, did you see it? Maybe Abbad saw it.
Yes, I saw it. معلش.
So what was the scheme?
أول قسم.
Okay.
لسه شنو بنت.
Turn off your mic. Aya, or I don't know who. So Abbad, did you see it? Who? Anyway, so who is talking
You can
now?
speak here. I connected this laptop.
So, Aya, do you want to answer? No?
Faris, Aya is with us.
Okay, so who would like to answer? Who saw the images and would like to answer? Abbad, Aya, or Anna?
So the chef was both. He was holding blade by the face.
Yeah.
Then we saw the eye. Then we saw the moon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we saw the eye again, but didn't have
Yeah.
the
So what is the scheme in this case? Please turn off your mic.
Mute.
Please turn on. Thank you. I'll continue. This is really not feasible. So anyway, you see that you had the image of the eye, and then you had an image of the moon with a cloud passing on it, and then you had a razor cutting the eye. So the cloud passing on the moon, which is horizontal line on a circle, and the razor passing on the eye have the same schema, horizontal on a circle, and this is how you go from one image to the other. So this is why it's an anamorphosis. So I hope this is clear. So you see, you have a lot of movie makers who really invested into these anamorphic images, where you see schemas that makes you move from one image to the other to the other. I'll show you now an anamorphic clip where you see this transformation between the images. It's by Bubsy Berkley. It's a clip. It's not from a movie. And I hope you'll be able to see it. If you're not able to see it, please open your documents on the OneDrive, which are the movies Deleuze, and you open Bubsy Berkley anamorphosis, which is time circuit, and you will see it. Okay, I hope you got the idea. You see how the bodies transform into flowers, and how these different flowers, they become shapes, geometrical shapes, etc. And this is an anamorphic image. You see it's not related to the word of the origins in this case, and it's just, it's an image that unfolds like that. Now, to get closer to the problems that can pertain to the anamorphic image is the problem of constructing a world. Like when you say, this is my world, and why anamorphic images are really like the signature of a world, even of a personal world. If you take someone like Leibniz used to say that the law of the word is anamorphosis. What does it mean? It means that to have a word, you need to have different figures, different beings, in the case of Leibniz, which can transform into one another. And the best possible word, which is a Leibnizian very well-known motto, would be the word which has the greatest diversity for the greatest continuity. Now, what does it mean? As you know, in our world, and our world is like a dream. Why? Because water can transform into animals, and animal can transform into plants, and the plants can transform into human beings, meaning you can have the cycle of nature or of the living, where each living can become the other living. When you eat, you assimilate the other beings, they become you. When you die, they assimilate you. And as you know, water becomes ice, and vapor that becomes water, water for plants, and it's in the plants later. So all of these are seen by Leibniz as anamorphic relation. And for Leibniz, hence, you constitute a word, you build a word when you're able to connect different beings via these anamorphic transformations. And this is when I was saying you build a world. And your dream is a world. It's your own personal world. While you have, the Leibnizian word, which is itself the dream of God. Now, why your world is in your dream? Because as you know, in your dream, you are the one who creates the anamorphic chain. And it's a personalized anamorphic chain. I explain. This we know it in psychoanalysis, etc. When you wake up and you write your dreams, each one writes them, and each one sees things that the other one wouldn't have seen. That if I dream of a dolphin, I think it transforms into my uncle, which transforms into a jazz band. This is proper to me. But if you dream of a dolphin, it could transform into an elephant and into a savanna in Africa. This would be proper to you. So as you can see, what makes your mind, your personal mind, is actually its anamorphic way of doing things. This is, if you want, would be yourself as a unconscious being. And you will be able to generate these images in a way which is proper to you. So if you have, by any chance, the problem of introspecting and building your own world, many people have that, like what would be my world, my thing. One of the ways to go is to build these chains of anamorphic images that are going to constitute a world, because they all relate schematically to each other, but you will be the one who is going to associate this image to that image to that image in this kind of schematic chain, which is going to be your own world. So I hope this is clear. You see, the notion of world and the notion of dream are hence connected, because actually the functor, what generates images inside the world, be it the real world for Leibniz or your dream world, is actually the anamorphic relation. I hope this is clear. So it is in this regard that there is another form of the dream. So the dream, again, it's an anamorphic relation that constitutes a world. And you can make movies like that where you feel that this is a very, very singular world. You know, things are very, they have something like that, not in common, but they move from one to the other in a first in an anamorphic way, and they are peculiar. You don't find them everywhere. You have some artists who go like that, who really build this kind of dream world, be it in their movies or art. Now, you have another version of the dream, which is that. Dancing is dreaming. If you want that, like a motto, dancing is dreaming. Why in the world dancing would be dreaming? Because dance is itself anamorphic. I hope now you see how we function in this system. We know that dreaming and dancing has nothing to do with one another. In one case you are dreaming, in the other case you're awake and you're dancing. So this is not the way you go. As an image, they are the same. Now, what does mean as an image? It's not that the way they look. As an image, it means the way they function as an image. And why dancing is dreaming? Because dancing is actually, when you dance, you generate your dance from a dust of perception, like in the dream. You connect the image generated with an anamorphic relation, and this projects you in a personal world, which are the components of the dream image. I explain. You see, when you dance, actually, you are in an anamorphic image. Why? Because when you dance, be it alone or with someone, what do? Actually, you are connected to this realm, be it memories, imagination, whatever you want. And when you see a movement, you call for another movement. And when you call for another movement, the other call for a new movement, and so on and so forth. A good dance or a good dance between two persons is when you feel that the movement of the person A triggered the movement of the person B, who triggered the movement of the person A, and so on and so forth. So you have this kind of loop. And this is why, to some extent, each time you dance, what do? You make a gesture. Let's say you open your hand, and this evokes for your partner to dive down, which evokes for you to move right, which evokes for him to jump to the side. And this is how you have this kind of anamorphic chain. Actually, even when you dance alone, you are in relation to yourself, and this kind of, I do this gesture, but I see the next gesture. So I do the next gesture on the ground of the first one, and the third, and the fourth, which is, again, anamorphic gestures. And actually, when you are a dancer, you start seeing that when you dance and you forget yourself, as we say, you forget yourself dancing, the chain is generated automatically. You don't think anymore about what you want to do. This would be a bad dancer. You know, when it doesn't take, you know, you try to dance, it doesn't take, it fades, it fades. These are the dangers of the dance. It's when the chain, meaning the anamorphic power, is not like awakened in you. And when you are in a state where you start, each gesture leads to a new gesture and a new gesture, you are as if you are in a dream, and you are really like carried by this movement. So to define dance in a precise way, because today you have all kinds of, everything is a dance. If I do this now, some say it's a dance, you know, with performance art and stuff like that. But if you want to give a precise definition for dance, it's that it needs to generate a power of being carried away. It's like a wind. It's like you are really taken. You are taken in the dance, And if you're not taken, well, it means that you're not really dancing. It's as simple as that. Of course, you have performance arts, you have all kinds of other things which are not dance per se. They are body images or, as you will see, other things, membrane images or whatever, but they are not dance proper, because really dance is this kind of oneiric force, or it encompasses the force of the dream, which is the force to create a chain from movements. Actually, dancers dance in front of a mirror because of that, not because they want to correct their movements. Good dancers, they're able to see with their projected mirror image this scheme for the next move and the next move and the next move. So you're always, in a way, dancing in a couple, even when you dance alone. Even when you dance alone, you're always you and yourself, you and your double. And when you make a gesture, virtual image, actualization, actualization, virtual image, so on and so forth. And this is how the dance can go on forever. For example, in The Red Shoes, which is a dance movie, a movie on dance, or a musical, as they call them, the woman is really drawn towards dancing as if it's a power that takes her away from her lover and fiancé. And you see that the guy, the impresario, the choreographer, is like a demon because he knows that she's unable to leave dancing, because dancing is such a power that when it possesses you, you can't anymore just, go back to your normal life or not dance. So at one point, she puts these red shoes and she's unable to stop. She keeps dancing and dancing and dancing. And the only way for her to stop is to kill herself, to jump out of the balcony, because she's really like enchained to dancing. And this is why, if you want an everyday example, it's very dangerous to dance with people. You go into a discotheque or a bar or whatever, a party, you're with your partner, meaning for other, as they call them today, and you go there, you start dancing with someone, you forget yourself with the other one, and you go into another dimension. And this is, of course, very dangerous. Why? Because your couple breaks down. Why does it break down? Because dance is a power that no one can control. When you start dancing with someone, and if you feel that you and her or him can compose an anamorphic chain, it means that you belong to the same world, or it means that you can build a common world. It means that both of your world can have a kind of zone of interaction, which is a new world. And this is why you get attracted, to those with whom you dance, because it's as if you are in a dream and you have this moment of grace. And this is when you end up, dumping your boyfriend who is unable to dance with you, where you feel that he belongs to another world. So what I'm trying to say is that, you see, the dancing thing is also a power. It's the same power as the dream. It's the oneiric power, meaning the power of dreaming, and it generates these dancing chains, which constitute a world, or which can bring together two worlds. I hope this idea is clear. It can bring together two worlds. So you see, dance and dreams are related in this sense. They are related in the sense because I hope you'll watch the movie by Minelli. Minelli, for example, he shows you how if you dance, you can enter the dream of someone. In Minelli, if someone is sleeping, dreaming, if you want to go inside his dream or meet him inside his dream, you can do a pirouette and you enter the dream of the other person. And the pirouette is this kind of doubling. You see, it's me and me, and it flips. For example, in the movie The Pirate, I hope you will watch the movie The Pirate, where you have all of these ideas synthesized. It's about a woman who dreams. She dreams about, she's a very bourgeois woman, she lives in this Victorian kind of family where she's destined to marry this very rich man. And she doesn't like the rich man because, it's not romantic enough and stuff like that. And this woman, she dreams about the pirate Macao. Macaco. And the pirate Macaco, he's known in the Caribbean to be very, very, very colorful, womanizer, pirate. He doesn't abide by the rule. And this girl is in love with him in her dream. And actually what happens is that there's a troupe of actors that comes to the village, and one of these actors, he falls in love with this woman, and he wants to enter her dream to make her believe that he's Macaco, for her to fall in love with him. And this is when you see the scene of entering the dream. And you see when you enter the dream, well, you start to dance. And in this case, the dream is a kind of hypnosis. And what's interesting, this is when you start detecting things in the image which are confirmation of your theories. What's interesting is that to enter the dreams, the hypnotic tool is a double mirror. So it's like a pirouette turning and turning, and where you see yourself and yourself, image actual, virtual, and this is how you're able to enter the dream of someone else. And when you enter the dream, you are taken away, you start dancing, you lose yourself, and you fall in love. So this is the scene from The Pirate by Minelli on how you enter the dream and how you lose yourself in the dream.
And now we come to the pinnacle of our entertainment.
This is
an experiment in the new and sensational science of animal magnetism, taught me by the great Mesmer himself. You know, of course, the principles of the great Mesmer. In short, hypnosis. Hypnosis. And now, ladies and gentlemen, before your very eyes, I shall perform this experiment, but I shall need some help. However, it must be the right person. Control cannot be exercised over everyone. I have failed with the confused, with the rebellious, with the recalcitrant. To perform the experiment ideally, I must have a pure person. One pure person. Nymph, in thy orisons be all my sins remembered. Purity at last. Purity. Ah, gracious lady, that you should be here makes it indeed a blessing. Come. Come, I, Seraphim, ask it. You know, whatever I ask you, whatever power I have for you is for your happiness. Sit, gracious lady. Pure spirit rest. She is now in a trance. I am about to release her spirit from its earthly bonds. Gracious lady, what is your name? Your name?
Manuela.
Manuela, where do you live?
In the village of Calvados.
Make a note of that. Manuela, you don't love the man you're going to marry, do you?
No.
You love someone else, don't you?
Yes.
Who is that other Manuela? Someone you've just met, isn't he? Perhaps this very afternoon. Think. Think. Somewhere by the sea?
Yes. The sea.
Who is he, Manuela? Say his name.
He is...
Yes?
Macaco.
Macaco?
Macaco.
Macaco, the pirate?
Macaco the fabulous. Macaco.
No, Manuela, you don't mean that.
Someday he'll swoop down on me like a chicken hawk and carry me away.
No, Manuela, pure
and
soul,
I shall
listen.
do his bidding. I shall follow him. Yea, to the ends of the world I shall follow him.
No, Manuela, forget Macaco. Now think again, pure soul.
Don't call me pure soul. It irritates me. Underneath this prim exterior, there are depths of emotion, romantic longings.
I know, and I'm here to release them for you.
There are depths of emotion, romantic longings. Underneath this prim exterior, there are depths of emotion, romantic longings.
Manuela, wake up.
Macaco. 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 There's a pirate known to fame. Black Macaco was the pirate's name. In his day, the Tops was here. from the Caribbean or Caribbean sea. Like the black from the Caribbean, like the black or Caribbean sea. Like the black from the Caribbean or Caribbean sea. As a child, his nurse foretold Mac was sure to be a pirate bold. For when feeding time had come, Mac could have a bottle, but a bottle of rum. Mac the black, Mac could have a bottle, Mac the black, but a bottle of rum. Mac the black, Mac could have a bottle, Mac could have a bottle, but a bottle of rum. When he sights a clipper ship, Mac would board her and begin to clip. First he'd grab the ladies fair, especially those with jewels to spare. Mac the black had him back. I'll be waiting patiently by the black or Caribbean sea. Mac the black.
I hope you got the idea. So this is where they compose this her dream. Now, so of course you have in these movies dangers, like if you get caught in the dream of another. And here again, I like to bring this back always to some things which are very, very mundane from your everyday life. Now, if you are caught in the dream of someone, even if it's someone who loves you, it might turn into a nightmare. Why? Because you become one of the anamorphic figures of his dream. Let's suppose your mother, your father, or whoever, your husband, dreams that you are this kind of person. He would like you to be this kind of person to be part of his world or her world. You can see that you're caught into his dream or her dream, and this turns into a nightmare for you because now you are simply one of the figures of his world. So it's a delicate thing where you could get caught in the dream of someone else. When you're caught in the dream of someone else, they'll make you dress in a certain way, they'll make you talk in a certain way, and you will lose your own self or dream. And you know, in the movies of Minelli, you a lot of time you have that. In one of his movies, there's the vision of a theater man. He wants to make them dance in a certain way, and it doesn't work. So when it doesn't work, it means that you're unable to compose or enter the dream of someone else. Now, on another side, you have when it comes to dancing, you have the entering into dance. So you can enter with dance into the dream of someone, or you can have an issue to start dancing. And this, you see it with scenes where you have what you call the degree zero, or the dust of perception. I explained. We said that dancing and dreaming have three things in common. They have a dust of perception, anamorphic relations, and they constitute a world. So the dust of perception in a dream, in a normal visual dream, is when you see light on a green curtain, and it takes you towards the green field of lilies. When it comes to dancing, it's a bit different. When it comes to dancing, actually, the world itself decomposes into very little degrees for a possible action, which means that let's say a sidewalk can become a car, or an umbrella can become a baseball bat, or you have these transformations. And you have these transformations because the things themselves are now connected schematically, anamorphically to other images, and this is when you're able to live the world in an anamorphic way. To illustrate that, I'll show you Singing in the Rain by Donan, where you will see this kind of, this kind of transformation of this world into a dream world. And this happens because the guy had a love declaration and he's very happy. And this is when the world, which is organized in a sensory motor way, is going to decompose into these atoms of action, which are going to connect to the dance world. And here I hope you'll notice how all the utilitarian kind of things are going to transform into other things. This is what you call the dust of perception that can, that dance is going to invest.
Take care of that throat. You're a big singing star now, remember? This California dew is just a little heavier than usual tonight.
Really? From where I stand, the sun is shining all over the place. I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again. I'm laughing at clouds so dark up above. The sun's in my heart and I'm ready for love. Let the stormy clouds chase everyone from the place. Come on with the rain, I've a smile on my face. I'll walk down the lane with a happy refrain, just singing, singing in the rain. Dancing in the rain. I'm happy again. I'm singing and dancing in the rain. Dancing and singing in
So I hope you see. I hope you have seen the return to an organized space when the cup comes. And this is really like the return to using the sidewalk as a sidewalk, etc. And I hope you notice these anamorphic things that he actualized, like the horse, the baseball bat. You know, he actualized many, many little characters while he was dancing. You see how here the physical space becomes this dust of possible actions to actualize movements. So, hence, in the dream image, you said, so you have the explicit dream, which is when you dream normally, and you have now, we have seen dancing, and dancing, we've seen how you enter the dream via dance, how you build a word via dance, and the degree zero. Now, another form is what you call word movement. So, what are word movements? Is simply when the world itself starts to move. For example, when you have, let's say, a shock, or when you fall in love, or when something like that happens, it's the world itself that starts in a way to dance, and this is actually what takes you into the anamorphic, in quote, this is not anamorphic anymore, it takes this kind of movement of world where things starts to gravitate around you. And actually, it is this movement of words that can take you from a place to the other, or from one dimension to the other. I explain. You see, it's not that complicated. It's like when you say, you know, the world is turning with me. What does it mean? The word is like carrying me or turning with me. It means that you receive such a good news or such a bad news that now the whole world is spinning. And this is what you call a world movement. World movements are like that. And they have this power of carrying you through many dimensions, or where you feel that you're standing still and it's the world which is moving. Now, in movies, they do that usually with you know, escalators, or with Luna Park kind of machines, or with cars. Depends on the movie. He's always slides, like Fellini did one with slide, where the character is able to slide through different worlds, and you see the world moving while he's standing still. So in this case, you're not the one, hence, generating the anamorphosis. You stand still, and it's the word itself that starts to rotate around you, which is a way to express breaks in the normal world, like falling in love, someone dies, stuff like that. When you have this kind of, when the normal world breaks, you have these world movements. So just to illustrate that, if you take Michael Jackson Moonwalk, I think you know this dance. Michael Jackson Moonwalk actually is between the claquette and the movement of world. You see, in what we have seen here is with Donan, I've seen the claquette. Now, why you have these claquettes like tick, 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 with the raindrops?
I'm ready. Are we ready?
You have the claquettes because this is the moonwalk, which is a word movement and a degree zero form of dance. It's both. Okay, I hope you. So the steps as in Donan, the steps of Michael Jackson, his feet, are what gives you this degree zero, like when Donan makes his claquette. But what's interesting in this dance move of Michael Jackson is the fact that he's able to transform that into a world movement, as if he's moving on a tapis roulant. Okay, so if you take breakdance, breakdance is world movements. It's as if the guy becomes fluid like that, and all movements connect to each other. Claquette is more degree zeros, where you really underline each step in order to actualize another step, so on and so forth. So this is, if you want, for the dream image, which is the biggest cycle. To conclude, I still have some time, the smallest circuit is what we call the Cristal image. So you see, we've seen today the recollection image, which is what we call the middle circuit. You have a problematic situation, like you don't know why you got here, and you go and you fetch memories. This is the middle circuit, the average circuit. You have the dream image, where the circuit becomes very big and you have anamorphosis, world movements, and things go in all directions. The dream image constitutes a world, etc. And the smallest one is what we call the Cristal image, which is the smallest circuit. Now, what is this circuit? This circuit is a situation where you are the double of yourself in the present. So I explain. You see, to explain that, I think the best way to go is to explain it in its originary form, which is Bergson's theory of time. Bergson says that when you hear knock, 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 how do you know that the second knock is the second knock? Bergson says the only way to know that knock number 2 is the second knock is when you add the memory of the first knock to the sound, which makes it the second knock. Fine. So if you didn't have a memory, you wouldn't perceive 1, 2, 3, would perceive 1, 1, 1. Now, the idea that Bergson comes out with, that he takes from Kant, is that actually time doubles. What does it mean? It means that the memory of the first knock should have had at the same time as the first knock for you to be able to have had this memory. I hope this idea is clear. When you hear knock and then you hear knock and you're convinced that the second one is the second one, is because you add the memory of the first to the second. But when could you have registered or recorded the memory of the first one? Bergson says you can't record it after the knock. You can't record it before the knock, obviously. So it must have happened at the same time of the knock. Now this have, of course, very, very twisted implication. What does it mean? It means that now at this you are recording in your memory what's happening now, even though you're not seeing or perceiving what's happening in your memory, because you're oriented towards the active world. It remains that the only way to solve the problem of succession is to say that the knock had already happened when you were perceiving. For example, in Bergson, you have a déjà vu, because instead of being attentive to what you are perceiving, you become attentive to the memory of you are perceiving. So you're able, something goes wrong in your mind, where you see the recorded memory live instead of seeing the perception live. And here Bergson says that, you see, time doubles. Meaning time is actually a structure like that. It's a crystal with faces, where you have here what he calls the caesura, this kind of point which is not a point, it's like nothing. And you have these two sides, where you have the present image, the actual image, and its virtual counterpart. As you have seen in the dream image, you had the actual and its virtual that gets actualized and it starts to spin. And in the recollection image, you have a fixed actual image, and the virtual is variable in relation to the actual image. So the crystal has this form. It's the tiniest, if you want, dimension of time, where you are doubled with yourself. Now, what happens is that when you are with your double, when things are being doubled, this is how time is able to become successive. Why? Because knock, 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 what does it mean? The knock, I have a memory. Second knock becomes a second because I have the memory of the first. The third knock becomes a third knock because I have the memory of the second and the first, and so on and so forth. And this is how you have a successive time. Actually, time can be successive and moving forward because it's doubling the images all the time. This is how you have succession. Now, what's interesting here is that some movie makers and artists are going to focus on this moment of the double. But before going there, you have to live that, really. You have to feel that the crystal is one of the powers of time. So far, we have seen two powers of time, the power to bifurcate or to have destinal points that make you deviate from your trajectory. You have the power of the anamorphosis, or the world movement that carry you, that carries you away in an anamorphic chain. And the third power of time is that you can become blocked inside the crystal. And what I'm saying here must be very palpable again, meaning part of your everyday life. If you take the fact of being a professor or a student or a son or a daughter or a boyfriend or a philosopher or whatever role you are taking, the role is your double from this temporal perspective. You see, the role is something you play, you actualize, and you can get stuck in your role. For example, love stories go bad when you have a fixed role and this role becomes like a prison and you're unable anymore to change or become someone else because you are stuck in this role. If you are a child in a kind of, in some families, you feel that you have this role and you can't have another role, and you feel that you are stuck with this persona, as they call it, and you're unable to get out of it. It remains that it is the persona that gives you a linear time, like when you are a professor, even though you are stuck, you can have more or less a career, meaning you teach, you get tenure, you retire, and this is a linear time. So I hope you're getting this idea. So if you want, the point of the problem when it comes to crystals is the following, is the relation between the unfolding of time moving forward and the crystalline structure. If you want the formal elements of this problem. Now, what does it mean? If you take movie makers like Fellini considers that linear time is bad because it's actually a time of dilution, it's a time of death, you get old and you die. And there's nothing interesting in linear time. It's a time of history, it's a time of wasted time that takes you to the grave. And for Fellini to save this time, literally, you need to double each image of this time with your child double. Fellini says in many interviews that he kept alive the child in him in order for him to be able to make movies, because only the child in him can double this situation in which he is with this kind of perspective, which is the child perspective on what is going on, which is going to crystallize this thing. So you see how he functions. So let's suppose you're living. Let's suppose you are living in Beirut. We really need a Fellini in Beirut because who can save that? We need someone to save that. What does it mean to save that? It means that the grocery shop, the service, the pollution. Of course, these are awful things. These are part of the linear time. But if you can have this kind of playful doubling of them, well, you start, you will crystallize this image and all of Beirut will become taken into this crystal, which is in this case the Fellini crystal or an equivalent in Lebanon, where you will see things from the vantage point of the adolescent, i.e. Fellini. So in this case, if you remember Amarcord, I hope you will watch Amarcord or Fellini 8.5. In Amarcord, you have this very nice scene of so it's Amarcord, where you have the child who sees characters from the days of the war, but he really sees them as characters which are the doubles of the real characters. This is what we call a crystallization. And for Fellini, as you can see, the crystal is positively connoted, meaning it's something good to be and to remain in the crystal. And you have these images that he films when he turns. Because only the crystal can save you from degeneration. If you take someone, just to make the opposition for you to understand that, if you take someone like another crystalline movie maker, it's Visconti. Visconti, on the other hand, thinks that the crystal is very bad. It's when you are stuck in the crystal and you start repeating your role. And given that you repeat your role, you start rotting on yourself and you die enclosed and imprisoned in your role. In that regard, he made, I think, where it's very clear, in the Guatopardo, for example, you have Burt Lancaster, which is this aristocrat. And aristocrats, of course, they live in a crystal. Why? Because, you know, they are detached from the world. They have these roles of being an aristocrat, and they repeat these rituals, like going to a picnic, marrying their children, you know, this kind of rituals, doing the prayer on Sunday. And you feel that the Guatopardo is really stuck in this kind of role of being the aristocrat of his town. And the line that passes next to this kind of ritualistic set of images is the Italian Revolution, which really like passes next to his house, literally. He's absolutely not concerned with this time, with the time of succession. He's completely absorbed with being enclosed in his role of being an aristocrat. And but the problem is that in the last scene, the scene where he dances with Claudia Cardinale, the valse, you see the valse is a crystalline, because you have these two figures that start turning on one another. And this is when he realizes that he missed living. And actually, this is very recurrent in Visconti's movies. The crystalline character who missed his life because he was completely taken into his double, be it as a musician, as an art professor, or as an aristocrat. For example, the art professor is in the conversation piece. I advise you to watch this movie, which is absolutely incredible. And the musician is in Death in Venice. In Death in Venice, what happens? You have this musician who is completely taken into his role of a musician, and the Venice is attacked by the plague, and you see the man rotting on himself, literally rotting. And then from within his state of being enclosed and separated from the world of time, the world of vitality, you see him there rotting and trying to reach out his hand to get to life again. But he's unable to get to life, and he has this last vision from within the crystal, and he's unable to reach beauty and life again. And this is how he dies. So I'll show you this last vision. And these visions, you have to see them, they are from within the crystal. And they have something crystalline. Of course, these images are beautiful because, as Deleuze puts it, it's too late. Beauty has something of this too late. It's too late for him to change and to get out of his role and to reconnect to something a bit vital, because he was caught in this kind of crystalline structure. Okay, so that would be it for today. I just remind you the 3 powers, and I hope you start living them and feeling them. I think it's the best way to understand art, as far as I'm concerned, because as I told you in the beginning, art is simply a magnification of life. To give you a kind of strong sentence, there's no creation in art. At least in this aesthetics, you don't create artistic stuff, you create living attitudes. This could be the ultimate creation, or you magnify living attitudes, which would be another form of creation in code. But it's not that you create stuff out of nowhere. So anyway, we've seen 3 powers, which are real powers. I insist on that. It's not that it's artistic stuff. Real powers. The crystalline power, which is the smallest circuit of time, where you can get caught in your own proper role. You're a teacher, a daughter, a boyfriend, or whatever, and you're stuck between you and your own image. And you have, of course, properties in that regard. I hope you will read more about them, or you can call me and we can talk more in details if you're interested in that. But you have this crystalline power that gets you stuck in a role where you're unable anymore to simply achieve what you want. The second one is the recollection, we said. The recollection, in here, time has a power to bifurcate. You're happily married, but you end up in a divorce, or it has a destinal power. Destinal power, you have these events which are very strong, but that become in a way unconscious, or you don't know where they are, that are going to bend your life like a black hole. And you have the bifurcating point, which are almost insignificant events that become bigger and bigger with time, and they ruin your life. Now, the third power that you have seen is the oneiric power, meaning the power of the dream. And here you have the normal dream, where you have your thoughts get enchained without your decision. You can't decide what you dream. You have this kind of chain, anamorphic chain. And maybe if you are a Freudian, you would say that you will discover who you are if you analyze really your anamorphic chain, because this is how you function on the subconscious level, unconscious level. And we said that you have the implicit dream, or what you call the dance and the world movement, which is a dream in the open. And in dance, we also have the same power, because you can get carried away with the dance. It's a power of carrying away. The same goes for world movements that can carry you away. Just a last remark on that. If you take war, I don't know if you have seen Valse with Bashir, and the guy starts to dance and to shoot, or if you have seen movies with Tarantino or with John Woo, if I'm not mistaken, where the guys, they shoot and they dance. You see, in this case, you don't really have, in this case, you use the power of the dream in order to destroy the world. And what's the difference between war and dreams? The difference is that in wars, you don't have the virtual. In wars, you just shoot and shoot and shoot, and you don't actualize things which are not from this world. Now, of course, you can use the power of dance in a war. It's like when you put music and you let people shoot everyone. It's like Wagner being used in Vietnam, when Francis Ford Coppola shows you how the American GIs are burning everything while listening to La Valkyrie. And here you are using this power of carrying away, but without the virtuality. So you connect actual and actual to destroy the world, instead of connecting the actual on the virtual to create a world which would be a dream. So a war is a nightmare in this regard. And it's not by chance if Minelli made a movie on the war called The Four Horses of the Apocalypse, where he shows you how actually the war is a kind of anti-dance. It's a reversal of the dance because no more virtualities are accepted, and you are just focused on the actual by using the power of the chain, the enchainment proper to dance. So that would be it for today. I hope you got at least the basic notions. And that you will, do you have any questions or on that, or we call it a day?
I'm good. I'm very good.
It's good. Any questions, Anna? Are you fine?
No, thank you.
Okay, so that would be it for today. You know, try to finish your papers on time. If you can't, if these audios are not very good, because you know it's Teams and the sound cuts and I don't know, you have an audio version which is recorded in a normal class with more details and you have a normal voice, so you can also refer to that. It's the same thing. So you can listen to in the folder audios. You have the same course but in a classroom. If you're unable to get it from these Teams recorded sessions, okay? I hope you're aware of that. You know that these things exist. You know that, just for me to know. No? You know that. Okay. Okay. So see you soon. Thank you for coming. So see you next Wednesday. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Faris.